Welcome to the 5-step plan. This is for you all who are thinking seriously about getting ready to serve on a board in 2026. Here's something that I see a lot of. I see a lot of people telling me that they're networking. They're going to these events, the one in the top left here, networking, passing out business cards. They're going to what looks like a crazy wild conference in the top right-hand corner with hundreds of people. Maybe it's an industry association or it's something to do with a topic of interest. And then I also see people having a one-to-one conversation as well. So they're going for coffees, they're going for dinners, they're having conversations with people. What I hear a lot of is people asking for help, people asking for someone to do them some favor. And the worst one is they go getting feedback or doing research and they go to meet people. So, for example, you go for a one-to-one meeting with someone really influential, and in that meeting, you say, hey, could I pick your brains, right? Do you think I would be a good fit for a board? I'm thinking about joining a board. What do you think? And that's a great conversation. I'm not saying it's not a nice conversation. It's a great conversation. But what it does is it creates, instead of a peer-to-peer conversation, it creates a mentor-mentee relationship almost immediately. And I like to remind people that the minute you join a board, if you've never been on a corporate board and there are 5 other corporate board members on that board, and they've been on boards for 10 or 15 years, they see you as an equal. Voting rights, equal everything, right? There's no difference between someone who's been on a board for 10 years and someone who's just joined. You have equal voting rights. So as a result, creating a mentor-mentee relationship the minute you walk in the door, drive your board career only downwards. So we're going to talk today about how to turn that around and what to do next. Well, the first thing that you want to do is stop networking until you have a plan. Stop meeting with people, stop going to events, stop speaking to people. You need the plan before you get out there. Okay, I see people doing this all the wrong way around. The first thing they do, walk out the door and start talking to influential people. That needs to stop. So what is the plan? Okay, well, I'm going to give you a little bit of an insight. By the way, thank you everyone who filled out the survey. If you didn't fill out the survey, it's in one of my very annoying emails that I sent over the last few days, reminding you about this session. So take a minute, you still have time, fill it in. But I do want to give you just some overall insights. And if we'll be talking later on about some one-to-one work that I would like to do with some of you. But what I am seeing generally is that the target board and the people we're speaking to do not match, or the target board and the people we're speaking to just don't connect. They're not in the same area. People have this impression that if you sit on a publicly traded company board, you just know lots of board members. You're in the board member cool gang, right? What actually is, a public company board member probably only knows a few public company board members. And so your target is a small to medium-sized privately held company, and there's this person who's been on 12 public company boards. That conversation's going to be a little tough. It's going to be the mentor-mentee relationship, right? Instead of the peer-to-peer, because they're not in your space. They can't really give you advice. They're not sure about private company boards. Quick story, I've worked with plenty of public company board members retiring out of public company boards and trying to get into the private company space. It's a real struggle. They get there eventually, but it's a totally different network. It's a totally different conversation. The bio, the resume, the LinkedIn, everything looks different. So in order to get to the place you want to be, you need to be talking to the right people who make the decisions. And for those of you who know me, I know there's a few people who don't. I spent 12 years at a company called BoardX, working directly with boards of directors, working with consultants, working with PE firms, working with search firms, anyone that was interested in getting to the board of directors. I also looked at every biographical profile of every board member known to man. And I saw their trajectory. I saw where they started and where they ended, because they were all board members generally of these larger firms. Medium-sized firms are going to be in their 50s, 60s, and 70s. So you can look back. Where did they start? What was their internship? What was their first job, right? And how did they get on their first board? And that was of interest to me. It wasn't necessarily of interest to everybody at BoardX, but it certainly was for me. So I combined both the knowledge I gained from understanding how boards actually recruit and who influences the recruitment process. And I'll tell you one thing that I learned from that entire experience is that it is not like a job search. And a lot of people treat this like a job search. And that's where I think it falls down as well. So insights from the survey, we're seeing an imbalance. We're seeing one other thing I also noticed, there was a question on there that said, What are the things you bring to a board? Hardly anyone actually had board level responsibilities and things that board members have, or what their roles and responsibilities are. There's a lot of executive, a lot of consultant, a lot of advisory work, not board. So the language, and we'll talk about that in a minute, that is a big piece. So everyone, what is the plan? Let's get pen and paper. Let's start writing this down because this is really important. Step one, which boards are you targeting? Okay. Now, step one, which boards are you targeting? I'm just going to stop sharing because we don't need to have this on all the time. The boards that you target are going to be absolutely essential to your success. They are going to dictate your success. Okay. Where you start on a board and where you end could be completely different. You may be around a lot of people who get onto public company boards, but that may not be the fit for you. May be around a lot of people who are going into the startup boards and you think that looks fun, but you don't have anything to bring to those boards. So making the decision about which types of boards are a good fit for you is going to be the difference between your success in the short term or not. Most people, I would say all of the people I've worked with who got onto boards very quickly, we determined the direction, we determined the types of boards, they went after it, and they got it. How do you determine what is a good type of board for you? Well, just because you read in the news about publicly traded companies doesn't mean they're the be all and end all, right? There's lots of different types. But I will tell you this, most of the time, the board that you will join is determined by your network, okay? So, hey, I'd love to be on a Fortune 100 board. Do I know anyone who's on a Fortune 100 board? Do I have the caliber? Do I have the background? Have I been a C-suite executive of a Fortune 100 company? And I would challenge you all to take a look at the boards. Go and look at a board, an example of a board, and go see, is that me? Does that look like me? Do I have similar backgrounds to those people? I think that's actually a really good step, a good next step for you all. Okay, I've got my board example. Now go find that board and look at every board member. Do I have that experience? Do I have those titles? Am I that age? People are surprised when I tell them that the average age of a public company board director is around 60 to 62, right? Sure, there's a 40-year-old, there's an 80-year-old, yes, but that's your age range, right? Private companies, the numbers are not as well known, right? We have a lot of public company information. Step one, which boards are you targeting? You need to figure that out. Number two, what do these board members actually do? Okay, I know we've done the governance course, we've read about this, we know what board members do, but what do the board members do at those companies, right? Public company, large public company versus small public company, totally different group of people. Private equity backed board, startup board, totally different group of people. They do something a little different. Do they all follow governance laws because they're fiduciary board directors? Yes. If you're thinking about an advisory board, which by the way is a great opportunity if you're 40, 45 and under, and you're thinking, hey, I need to get some experience before I start looking at corporate boards, maybe an advisory board is a good step. Those are pretty complicated. Again, I'll be happy to have a conversation with anyone about those, but they can be very formal, very informal. So you need to figure out, what do these board members actually do? And then question, can I do those things? Right? Is that in my wheelhouse, right? Startups, connecting them with fundraising, right? And looking at, are we going to go through a Series A? Well, do you know how to raise capital, right? Well, no, but I like startups. They're fun. I get that a lot. I think they're fun. I want to be part of it. But what do they need from their board members? Okay. Now, if you get to step two and these things are not lining up, you go back to step one. I need to look at my boards again. This is not the right board. This is not the right board fit. I looked at the board members. They don't have my background. I looked at what they do. I don't really do any of those things. Go back. Or if it's a thumbs up, you move over to step three. What's step three? Value proposition. Let's go through that first. So everybody talks about this. They talk about value proposition. And I like to disclose exactly what that means from my perspective, because again, I'm hearing and seeing people talking about their board careers all the time. I mean, I'm doing mock interviews. I'm even sitting in on interviews and all kinds of things. And I'm hearing from the interviewers and I'm hearing from the boards. I actually heard from someone yesterday about this, saying that one of the biggest problems they have is people walking into these meetings and not actually giving their real value proposition for a board. There is a question that you should all rehearse and you should have a great answer to. And it's, tell me about yourself. Tell me about yourself. It's going to be the first question anyone ever asks in an interview. By the time you get to the interview, it's too late to start planning, right? And by the way, the interview may be the dinner that you have tonight with somebody that says, hey, you're new, we haven't seen you before, tell me about yourself. How are you going to tell them your story that has a board story in it, right? Not just, well, I worked here and I worked there and I graduated from there and today I'm doing this. What's your board story? What's your board experience? Have you ever vocalized that before? Most people haven't. I worked with a client recently, and as we were going through my program, they remembered that they had actually been on a corporate board. We had already written the bio. I said, okay, we're going to add that in. But we forget. It's totally understandable. This was back in 2016. Totally understandable. You may have more board experience than you think. Have you presented to boards, been in boardrooms, been active, been a CEO in a boardroom? All of these things. They all count as relatable experience for people who are looking at you and considering you for a board seat. Board experience counts, and I'm sure you guys know this, but board experience counts for a lot when it comes to being on a board. You also need to be able to talk about what do you actually bring to these boards? And it cannot be activity-based. It must be problem solution based. Okay, so what are these companies trying to solve? What do they want to do? Most companies want to make money, right? They want to grow. They want to pay their investors. They want dividends for shareholders. They want to be able to maybe hire more people and grow even more. Maybe they want to buy more machinery so they can get faster or produce more products. But generally, we want to grow. So stay focused on what they care about and ask yourself, if I were the CEO of that company, what would I care about? What would I want my board to advise me? LinkedIn and documents. I just put documents because we have a lot of people here from different countries, different places, and they're all called something different. In the United States, a bio and a board bio and a board resume are pretty much the basics in terms of documents that you need in order to be taken seriously, right? Again, I've told a story on email. I interviewed the first round of interviews for a public company board role, and not one of them had a board bio or any document ready. Somebody said, hey, give me 2 weeks and I'll send it to you. 2 weeks, that's a long time. That shows me already you're not ready. You don't have to immediately send it, but you can spruce it up and send it, right, in 24 hours. So in the United States, you need those two. In the UK, you need a board CV. There is no harm in having a board bio. I think it's actually probably a little bit more formal, but again, no harm in having one. And then in places in Europe and the Middle East, again, it's more of a CV, right, that has a board spin on it with your board experience in it and things like that. This needs to get done. All right. LinkedIn. I want to tell you a little story. I don't know if this person is on the line. They certainly don't have to put their hand up at all, but I had a call with somebody a couple of weeks ago who said, I think I just got a board interview because of my LinkedIn. We had taken this person's LinkedIn and taken it from being an executive. So, hey, I'm a C-suite executive and I do C-suite executive things, to transforming it into a board member LinkedIn. So it talked about the board experience. And this person did have board experience, but it wasn't right there on the surface. And they went for lunch with someone, and it was someone they said they knew fairly well. And they noticed before the lunch that they had looked at their profile. And then after about 5 minutes of the lunch of doing the small talk, they said, hey, do you serve on boards? And my client said, we've been on boards and whatever the story was. And they said, okay, I need to introduce you to somebody because there's somebody looking for someone just like you, right? And I can refer you. Next thing, interview was happening a couple of weeks later. So does LinkedIn get you on boards? I don't know if that's a statement that I'd want to put money behind, but I would like to challenge you if how many people have actually looked at your LinkedIn profile in the last 90 days. There are analytics on LinkedIn where you can actually go and have a look at that. So go and have a look. It's in the hundreds. And then if I promise you, if I asked you who's seen your board bio in the last 90 days, 1 or 2 people maybe, right? So you're spending a lot of time looking at the board bio and ignoring the LinkedIn, okay? And yes, you can post, you can do things on LinkedIn, you can be active. I can give you a lot of advice around what works. It's not about posting like a crazy person. I know I do that. I do that for different reasons. But for people who are serving on boards, you want your profile to look pretty conservative, pretty plain, pretty simple. I'm a board director. This is what I do on boards. And then if you post something, make sure it is board level related, not just, hey, so-and-so, happy birthday, or whatever it is that people do, or well done on getting your job. We need comments about things that are going on boards to create that image. You're building a brand. Okay. And by the way, for a lot of you, this has not been done before. I get it, right? I totally get it. A lot of people have been very successful in their careers without LinkedIn. This is now your opportunity to create your own personal professional brand that is 100% visible to everyone and to take control of it. So that's all I'd say, is take control of your own brand. Okay, so we've been through step 1 to step 3. We're going to be hearing from Jeff Highland in just a minute, who will be talking about his experience getting onto a board. And he got onto a board fairly quickly, and he's going to talk about what was required, what he did, how he did it, and the outcome. And actually, there's been some really amazing opportunities following that as well. So he'll be talking about that. But let's go to step 4. So let's just put in a picture. So we got step 1, we know what boards we're going to join. Step 2, we know what they do. So we've figured it out. We've now got our value prop. What do we bring to these boards, right? And we got LinkedIn is now saying, these are the types of boards, and this is what I bring to these boards. You got your bio, you got your resume. Now what? Remember what I said right at the start? Stop networking, okay? But step 4 is not to necessarily network, but to build a solid relationship map. That's to build a contact list. You do not have to have hundreds of people in your list. I'm sure there are people who have that, and good for you. But most people will have, to start, 3 to 5 really important people, influencers, people who are movers and shakers, people who can make stuff happen for you. But before you go, and this is a big myth and a big assumption people make, which is, well, I need to go and talk to lots of board members. I'm going to dispel that myth very quickly. If you're on a board and there's governance and rules and regulations about what you should be acting independently, right? Imagine you put your hand up to the CEO and said, hey, I've got a friend of mine who I think would be really good on the board. Can we bring him on? Is that good look? Probably not. If the board is seeking someone and they know you, they may refer you. But it's not always a good idea for board members, just regular board members, right? Not nomination committees and things like that, although they need to be very careful too. They don't bring friends onto the board. They need to be very careful about who they bring onto the board. And these are the things I learned when I was at BoardX, because often when I would speak to companies and say, who's involved in the recruitment process, they would be very specific about who it was, and they would not take names from anybody else. So just saying, I'm going to go and speak to board members, you've just put yourself into the tiny minority of people that can actually help you. So again, I know everybody's busy here. Nobody has time to have 12 lunches and 15 dinners every week, right? We just don't have that. There's just not enough days, not enough hours in the day. So where are you going to get the best bang for your buck? Where are you going to get the best time spent? Well, again, from having worked with all the businesses and the organizations that worked with boards, I can tell you now that there are a lot of consultants, and that's corporate lawyers, accounting firms, investment bankers, even private wealth advisors are on the phone, and many others are management consultants, McKinsey, Bain. They're on the phone with their clients. They're talking about their boards. The lawyer is maybe even sorting out a problem that might be related to one of the board members. They know about changes that are happening at that company before anybody does. Now, do they stick their hand up every time and go, I have somebody for you? No, but I worked with a very large law firm once, and I went in to meet the partner there. And that partner, he told me that he gets 2 to 3 calls per month from his clients asking, hey, if there's anybody that, let us know. So companies will go to their trusted networks to find connections and find board members before they ever start talking to the market, or advertising, which again, a lot of people think boards are advertised. They are not. That is the really good ones. The ones that are real are not. There are some scammy posts online. If you want to apply to those, go for it. I would not recommend it. But really, they go to their trusted networks, and then they may go to the search community. They may not. The search firms, and they are called search firms and search consultants, they only cover the very large firms. Why? Their fees are so high, very high. You'd fall off your chair if you knew how much they charge. It's a lot of money. Only the Fortune 1000 or maybe the Russell 3000 can afford those kinds of fees. They do pro bono work for nonprofits. That's more of a business development type angle, but they do work for nonprofits. But my whole point is that you need to figure out the type of board you're going for, who influences there. And it's not just the board. CEOs are a major influence, especially if they own the company. If it's a family-owned business, probably the family. Or, again, lots of consultants sit around family business and are really trusted networks to these organizations. So that's a bit about step 1 to step 4. We're going to pause for a second and we're going to have Jeff Highland unmute and come on. So I'll introduce Jeff just very briefly because I know he's going to talk more about his story. But Jeff is a former CEO and is now on boards and part of a private equity firm. And he works with very specific types of companies. Although when we talked, sometimes he said he'd rather be working with others, but we all have a subject matter expertise. So Jeff, thank you so much for joining and contributing and sharing your story. But I'm sure everyone would like to hear just how you got onto your first board and what that process looked like.
Sure, I'm happy to. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so I'll tell you the good, the bad, and the ugly of my process. And I'm still learning, so it's not like I have it figured out. Don't get me wrong. I'll tell you about my recent failures too. So it's a process, but I'll tell you what. Basically, first off, I engaged Naomi because she knew what she was doing. She was awesome, and I had too many different visions of what I wanted and what I thought I would be good at in a board. But you got to have an elevator pitch, and I can't go to a PE firm that I know and say, gee, I want to be on a food company board. And then a week later, call them up and say, hey, I also would love to be on a technology board. And then 2 weeks after that, call them and give them another industry. It just doesn't work that way. You've blown your shot. So I went to Naomi before I started reaching out to anybody. And then once we started the process, during the process is when I actually initiated my networking to let my network know that I was comfortable at that stage. She got me very quickly up to that stage. And so I felt comfortable reaching out to my network and saying, hey, this is what I'm looking for. This is how I think I can add value. So and that was my approach. I just want to help. So the way I looked at networking, I think Naomi has set it up pretty well of all the things that are leading up to what you need to do to be prepared. But I'll talk about then that next stage, which was for me that networking, or I almost looked at every single interaction I had as an audition. One, it helped me get my elevator pitch nailed. And so by the 5th time I'd said it, it just rolled. It was just easy to talk about. And so for me, that was important. All those little auditions led to ultimately where I had the opportunity, my first opportunity. And I'd already been on a public company board, but I'd done a lot of stuff. But what I would tell you, though, is every single person on this call, one thing that I failed at early on was I didn't utilize the companies I was at to do presentations to the board. Reach out to your own board. And even if you're not on the board, say, hey, can I come and present to the board about X? Or can I come and sit on the board calls to just learn from my own edification? Awesome way to do it. And it gives you immediate credibility when you're talking to somebody else. No, I haven't been on the board, but I'm presenting regularly to the board for a particular topic, showing your expertise. I wish I'd done that. I did not do that. I had to present regularly to boards with my career. So it was just a constant part of my life. But in the companies I worked at, I wish where I was not a board member, I wish I would have done that, especially earlier on. I would also say that it's not job hunting, it's relationship hunting, because it is a process. You got to talk to people. So you're identifying those relationships, and your network needs to know that you're interested in it. That was one of the challenges I had, was that people knew what I did. People called me. That was great, but they didn't know that I had changed my career direction to go on board membership. So I had to let them know I'm still doing that. It's a process. So what I did was I sorted all my contacts. I went through my contacts and sorted them A, B, C, D. A being the highest priority, what I thought could get the biggest benefit out of the buck. And that A group was where I found that first opportunity while I was still working with Naomi, probably halfway or 2/3 of the way through, was I happened to get that right person who said, well, as a matter of fact, boy, I didn't know that about you, Jeff. Sure, here's an opportunity. And so I interviewed with not the P firm, but with other board members, and I got lucky and I got it. So once you've done that, though, I think what I did was I had an email and a calling campaign, and calling, of course, is more personal. Email is more passive, but depending upon the size of your network, you can't reach everybody and you can't stay in front of them if you're just making phone calls. Just like Naomi said, it's exactly right. There aren't enough hours in the day. So for me, that was a process for me. I also looked at what my targets were and where my relationships were the strongest. For me, happens to be in private equity, but can also do that with company direct calling because you happen to be an expert in a particular industry. Fabulous. Gee, I'm an aeronautical engineer. Okay, well that's a great skill set to have. Good for you. Focus on that. Focus on your industry. But also those referrals, what I liked and what I thought about was like, I wanted to go to PE firms, accounting firms, law firms, because it's not just a one-time approach of going to a company and saying, boy, if there's an opportunity here, I'd love to help you. That's a one-time. But when you go to somebody who would have multiple opportunities for you, that's a win. And people are busy, they forget, okay, stay top of mind to them. But that was my strategy. You can also look at the life cycle, that stage of where the company's at. Gee, I'm better, like we're talking about, with early stage, or I'm better with more mature companies. What's your career vector telling you is your best use of your time? Because that's going to be critical as far as I'm concerned. Also, institutional investors, we didn't mention that. Institutional investors are a great source. If you can build credibility with them, that's something I'm working on right now. I wish I would have done. There's another failure that I think I wish I would have been smarter about that, but that's okay. So now I'm actually going to some institutional investors because they want changes in a company. They're going to go in, they're going to buy a major stake in that company, a major position, and then then they need board members to implement those changes. Or not really implement, but oversee those changes. So that's another thing. In the search firms you're talking about, Spencer Stewart, Heidrick Struggles, Russell Reynolds, Korn Ferry, they all have major board practices. I'll tell you, I have not had a great deal of success with them, but I think it's just part of that leg of the stool that you need to make sure you do. You need to reach out to them. And they all have people that are just focused on board positioning. So I would do that as opposed to somebody who's trying to fill the low-level accounting position. That's great, but it's not going to help you on this call. Then what I tell you, what also doesn't work. What doesn't work is when you talk to somebody and you talk about an operating mindset. So Naomi and I talked a ton about this because that was me. That was me. I'm Mr. Implementation, and that was a loser strategy. I'm telling you, I got zero traction with that. Like zero traction. They just weren't interested. Oh, so you want to be a CEO? No, I don't. So instead, shift it to strategic oversight, to fiduciary risk mitigation, to guiding culture or something like that. That's board level discussion. Those are winner things to mention as opposed to talking about, well, I run a company of 342 people and I make sure everything's done correctly every day. Okay, well, good for you. Congratulations, see you. So also what I found is, and Naomi referenced this, but I don't ask for directorship. I don't ask somebody for that. I don't do it. Instead, what I do is I say, here's where I can add value. And it goes to that value proposition. I don't say use that because I think it's an overused term, but here's where I can add value to an organization if they need help. Okay. Then they know that you have that unique skill set. Public company boards and large private boards, look, they have specific, and Naomi, you can correct me here if I'm wrong, but this is my experience in talking to several, is that they have very specific skill sets they want to fill when they're trying to fill a board position. This person is now leaving the board for their own personal reasons or whatever, their term is ended, whatever the reason is, they're leaving. But gee, we want somebody in risk management who really knows risk management. We want somebody who has big cyber skills. And so sometimes those aren't me. And I just tell them, it's like, okay, well, I'll keep my eye open for somebody that I know would fit that role, but that's not my skill set. That's not my experience. So it's okay. I walk away from it.
And you're right, Jeff. I just want to jump in. With boards, they're just not looking for somebody to sit in a seat, right? Whoever they bring in. Actually, this is something I heard from someone recently. They saw a board and they knew someone was leaving and they knew they were trying to replace them. And they made the assumption that they were replacing them with someone who is exactly the same. Again, it's not like a job search. They look at the strategy, they look at the plan. Where do we want to be in 5 years, right? To your point, can you get us there? And Jeff, I know you and I talked about this at length. Your areas of expertise were in sometimes where companies were dealing with a lot of problems, right? And they had to, and you were going in to advise them on how to fix them and mentoring the CEO. Maybe a company that's just going along and everything's great. It'd be nice, but I don't know if they need someone like you, right? So that comes into it.
It does. It does. Just the last couple of things I would say is when you're interviewing is a two-way street, like I made reference to before, where I didn't have the skill sets. Keep that in mind, whether it's, I won't name the company, but I'll tell you that I was talking to a company and they were very interested. I found some ethical challenges and I said, no, I'm out and I'm done. And I walked away right away. And so, and that I can, as a board member, I can set a tone, but if there are people in the management team that are going to choose to behave ethically, I can't change that behavior. So I said, I don't want to take that ethical risk myself on. So just remember that it's a two-way street. Remember, they have to have D&O. If you haven't been on a board yet, D&O is like I refuse to be nonprofit. It's different, and I've gotten off all my nonprofit boards, which have been several. But more so, if it's a commercial board, you need to have D&O for sure, and you need to understand what your board role, your objectives are. So what are they trying to accomplish? Going to what Naomi said earlier of like, well, what does the CEO want? But also, what do the other board members want? What do they want to have? And the last thing I'd say is you all on this call, everybody's pursuing this for a reason. You thought it through. You feel like you can add value. So great, just go do it. That was my attitude. It's like, just do it. And maybe leads into maybe your last point, Naomi, but what I would tell you is that life rewards action. It's a life law. We can't change it. It's true. Life rewards action. So take action. It's fun. Have fun with it. That was always my attitude. Just have some fun and try it out. And I'll tell you, something I do that I've done for decades is I live in the world of tens. That's what I call them. So I'll put 10 things of something on the left side of my desk, and I will go and I will make 10 calls for networking type calls, board position calls, and not just an email, but something more substantial than that. Once I have that one, I'll move it over to the right side of my desk. And then I'll keep doing that until I get all 10 done. And sometimes that means I'm going and it's 6 o'clock and I haven't got my all 10. I shift my efforts going to the West Coast. I go, okay, I got to get my 10. I got to get my 10. So I got to tell you, it's just a little secret that I do, but it keeps me locked in. And I will tell you that Naomi, last thing I'll say is Naomi mentioned that some of the things that have worked and some of the things that haven't worked. And just recently I lost out on 2 board positions. 2 positions I really wanted. I thought I was a really good match for what they're looking for, risk mitigation, the things that they needed, audit committee, and yet I lost. And that's fine. They found somebody else that they felt fit to build better. But I'll tell you, never ever ring the bell. Never ever ring the bell. And now that I've lost those 2, I doubled down my efforts though. And I have 2 more now that I'm chasing. And both have said they want me to do. One's a tier 1 automotive supplier. So it's a pretty substantial operation. Another one's it's a smaller, couple $100 million company. But so it's just a matter of keeping the faith and doing exactly and keeping in mind the reason why you're doing it. I hope that helps, Naomi. If I'm not saying stuff you want me to address, I'm happy to.
No, that's been great. I actually think I love the candid conversation here of, you'll see Jeff's got on the board and everything else. It's still a struggle, right? Like this is not an easy process. So I think that's been great. Thank you so much for sharing that. You've teed up my step 5, but I'm going to sidestep before I give away step 5. And I'm going to ask Harry Roberts if he'd like to say a few words. This wasn't in the plan originally, but I recently spoke with Harry and he said he wanted to share what has been happening with him recently. And he does actually come to a lot of these calls. So welcome back. Quick backstory to Harry. Spent many years at Starbucks, building Starbucks, and was the chief creative officer. And then after that has been very successful in retail, and building retail businesses. And he's just a great guy and a great creative mind as well. So, Harry, do you want to share your recent updates with us all?
Well, good morning, everyone. So, first of all, I will say that Naomi's process works. If you follow her steps, the probability for success increases tremendously. And in listening to this conversation, what I think about LinkedIn is that it's a great place to refer people to your profile, and having that LinkedIn really be current, your page be really current and transparent. And so that it's like a third-party verification, and it works. I had not updated or really done a LinkedIn page at all until signing up here with Naomi, and she went to work and helped me create this profile on LinkedIn. I'd never written a resume in 60 years of work. So we pulled all of that together, and that has been a godsend. And so I think, Naomi, you told me we've had like 13 or 14 work sessions with you.
That's
And
correct.
in that time, I've joined 2 nonprofit boards. One is a major university in the state of Washington in their business school, and a private company doing 40 million in sales, which is both in retail and food manufacturing distribution, which I have great experience in, and I can really help this company. So I've joined them, and it's a compensation position. So we've done all that in a very short period of time. And my approach has been to use third-party verification. Your references are a good source of insight for people to draw on. So don't be bashful about using them. And then the last thing that I've been doing is posting opinions and points of view on LinkedIn, about one every other week, sometimes a couple a week, but they are all relevant to what I've done for my career and what I think and see about the world at large for retail and food and manufacturing in general. And the responses have been overwhelming, with people reviewing them and messaging me and commenting on them, which has actually been quite rewarding personally, but it's also leading to opportunities. So for me, that's really about brand building. So we are a brand, each one of us. And so how you position yourself in the market is really critical to finding roles that will satisfy your psychic. I will tell you that I have a few standards that I will not compromise. To make a decision to join a company, a board, I have to believe in the product. If it's not a great product, I'm not interested. And I have to interview all of the people who are on the board. Now, it's interesting how I just positioned that. I said, I have to interview them, not them interviewing me, right? Because if you can understand the motives of a group of people, you can really help craft solutions. And so understanding how this group of people fit, what their motives are, within that organization, and help you pitch what you believe you can contribute so that it's a win-win. And just follow Naomi's advice and you'll get there.
Thank you, Harry. I appreciate it. Harry actually copied and pasted Harry's LinkedIn into the chat, and also Jeff's LinkedIn into the chat, so you can connect with them. Also, the board that Harry will be joining is TBD right now. We can't disclose the name, but I think within a couple of weeks we'll be able to do that. But he's also turnaround, right? There's a lot of turnaround here of people who are taking companies that might be showing a few signs that they may start to be failing. And so somebody that comes in either on the board side or on an executive side is the work that a lot of these people do. So that was a lot of the value proposition, right, that I think you brought. Well, thank you to you both. Okay, let's reveal the final step. I think it's pretty obvious to everyone what it is, because we've been just talking about it pretty much nonstop, and that's you need to take action. Okay, you can have all the pieces, or you may not have all the pieces yet, right? The bio may not quite be there or whatever. Some of these things don't need to be perfect. They don't need to be 100%. But if you go through the steps and you have everything planned out, the next step is to then take action, right? And do you see how this presentation at the start was all about people going out and talking to their network? It actually happens in step 5, not step 1. So have a rethink about how you are approaching the board space and whether you are ready to get out there and speak to people, because things will happen when you are prepared and positioned to have those conversations. Now, just to a final thing, I want to say, if anyone here is really serious about pursuing boards, right, and you would like some strategy, some positioning, some guidance, you would like somebody to show you not just where to go, but where not to go, because that saves you a lot of time, a lot of money, and a lot of resources, and a lot of headspace and energy. If you'd like to get clearer on how to pursue boards, I'd like to invite you to have a call with me, and I'd be more than happy to go through your plan and actually give you some advice on what that looks like. Let me just share my screen and I'll give you very quickly here. There is a QR code here that you can just book in 30 minutes. So if you're really serious about your board strategy, your plan, and you would like to show me your plan, and I've put here, if you want me to audit your plan. What is your plan? Let's audit it. Let's look at whether it does line up for what it is that you want to do. For those of you who are eager to get onto a board and who want to get this done in the next 6 to 12 months, it's so important that you just line up all of the things that we discussed in the right way, and then of course the final piece is to take action. And as you all know, both Jeff and Harry and everybody here, those of you who have worked with me, that when there's a call with me, I'm looking for what's been happening, what's been going on, how did that call go, right? What are we doing next? What's on our list of goals that we need to achieve? I'm very goal oriented, and so we get stuff done. And so 2 things I do want to remind people of, though, and Harry and Jeff are showcasing this, which is that, yes, you can have C-level titles and work for big companies, and both of them have. But I think 2 things everybody has in common that gets onto a board, and that's they have a great reputation and they have great relationships. Now, those 2 had probably great reputations in a wider audience. We don't have to have a great reputation across thousands of people, but we do have to have a good reputation, and then solid relationships. People that line up with the types of boards that we want to join, right? The 2 have to come together, as I mentioned before. So if you say, yes, I think I have a great reputation in business and the things that I've done and my achievements, and I feel very confident in my relationships. Could I do better? Yes, we could probably all build new relationships here and there, but do I have some great solid relationships? People who would help me in a situation like this. Come to me, talk to me about your plan. Let's see if there's any gaps in the plan that I can help you put you back on track. I think we've answered all the questions in the chat. Someone did say, and I know we've got 5 minutes, I want to make sure everybody goes back to work on time. Examples of bios. Pete, I'd have to talk to you about that. Does volunteer board experience count? Yes, it's how you present it that matters. For example, if you just talk about all the fundraising you did, that's okay. I know that's what you do, but talk to me about the things that are different, things that are not the things that you do. Thanks, Jeannie. Yep, Jeannie's story is really interesting too. Sorry, I'm going to just talk a little bit. She actually joined a startup networking mentoring group and had been made connections through those mentors. I say this to people a lot. I say, hey, is there a startup community close by? And they go, no, I don't want to join a startup. I go, no, it's not for the startups. It's for the mentors, right? Those are the people that you want to meet, movers and shakers. And then obviously, I think there was also a mention here of, absolutely agree, Amber. I think there was something that I was going to talk about with Sarah. Oh, Sarah's another example of somebody who got board experience while she was working. So she actually got onto the board of a subsidiary board. So there's lots of ways that you can get onto board. Again, if you want to have a chat with me, set up some time and we can go through that together. By the way, I did open up Saturday. This week is terrible. For those of you who know me, this is not my background. I'm in Chicago. So I'm in Chicago all week. But Saturday, I'm free and I opened up my calendar for those who want to chat. Okay. If there are no other questions, feel free to contact me through my link. It's been great seeing everybody. We'll be back in 2 weeks. I'll be sending out the agenda very soon. So I'll see you all then. Thanks so much, everybody. Have a great afternoon.